Hello, White Sox fans. The trade deadline in the rearview mirror. Let's take a look back at my top 5 surprises from the trade deadline. And it's different but interesting to do this a month later because with a month, we can really play armchair quarterback of what was a good move or what was a bad move. And I'll start out at number 5. It was relatively quiet. Now, we knew going in that we weren't probably going to have any huge splashes, any major blockbuster type of deals. But the White Sox in the past, they stripped down everything to the bare bones. Any part that they could move, that they would move for whatever they could get, even if it's just salary relief, getting people off the books. I wasn't sure if Andrew Benintendi would be traded along with a prospect of some sort to get money off the books. Not that the White Sox have too much money on the books, but they have operated so cheaply in the past that I thought anything was possible. That didn't happen. And I think it was a case of no news is good news. Because while I would have been completely understanding if there were a few more trades, I didn't want to see the White Sox make moves just to make moves. And I really was surprised at how many people stuck around on the team. And to be honest with you, on trade deadline day itself, there was only one actual trade. There was a trade the day before, the last 24, 48 hours, only 2 White Sox trades. One of them was somewhat substantial, not massive, and the other one was a minor move. So it was a relatively quiet trade deadline for a team that had a number of veterans on there that didn't get traded. And to be honest with you, biggest reason is that a lot of those veterans didn't have great years, so they didn't have much value at all. As we saw just a couple weeks after the deadline passed, Miguel Rojas got DFA'd. He was one of those guys that was hopefully going to create some value for himself and then be traded at the deadline. Didn't come to pass. Same thing with Aaron Civale. White Sox were certainly hoping when they picked him up from the Brewers that he would kind of turn things around and look like a serviceable back of the rotation starter. He wasn't that. He was an innings eater at best, an inefficient innings eater who really didn't log too many games where he went much past the 5th, maybe none. So he did not build up any trade value. White Sox end up putting him on waivers. The Cubs claim him. We'll see what he does on the north side, but he didn't do much on the south side. Number 4, we get a new infielder. I thought with everything the White Sox had going, that one place of need was the outfield. I think above everything else, the infield seems pretty set to me. Looking around our infield, we have a lot of guys that can play multiple positions. So you can't even say that you have this guy at first, this guy at third. But, whether it's third, second, short, Lenyn Sosa, Colson Montgomery, Chase Mydroth, Miguel Vargas, and then Tim Elko. And it just really seems like we have a very, very good infield as it is. I love this infield. I did not think we would get another infielder. I didn't really want the White Sox to get another infielder. But in the Adrian Hauser deal, the White Sox pick up, among a couple of other minor leaguers, Curtis Mead. And while I was not crazy about that at the time, I don't think he was the headliner. He was maybe something of a throw-in. But with Mydroth and now Vargas going down with injuries, Curtis Mead, he went to the minor leagues at first as soon as the White Sox got him, but really quickly he was called back up. I've been really surprised and pleased at what we have gotten out of Curtis Mead since he has come over to the White Sox. With the White Sox so far in 23 games, he's batting .286, on base plus slugging in the upper 600s. Again, middle infielder. You're not expecting a whole lot of pop, but I love that batting average. I'd love to see the walks go up a little bit. He's only 1 for 1 in stolen base attempts. I don't know how fast of a guy he is, but he has been decent with the glove as well. So we've gotten a guy, it just shows you that you always need depth. White Sox released Miguel Rojas and Curtis Mead very easily. He could slide into that utility infielder, the super utility type of guy, a Leury Garcia type in his prime, if you will, except much younger, controllable for multiple seasons. As we see here, he is pre-arbitration eligible, and he will be for a while. As of this recording and as of this update from Cott's baseball contract, he only has 103 days of service time. He's gotten appearances in a couple of different big league seasons, but he's only 24 years old. So he's the same age as Brooks Baldwin, Drew Thorpe, Jonathan Cannon. He is like of the right vintage for this core team to grow together. I did not love seeing the White Sox get a guy with big league middle infield experience. But now that he's here, I'm happy he's here. So I think that is a good move. And I don't expect him to develop into a star of any sort, but he could become a very, very valuable person. I'm sure everybody's going to be thinking that my pick for number 1 is the fact that Luis is still on the team. No, I'm putting this at number 3 only because it was kind of made known as July went on that he was really swinging the bat well. The White Sox weren't getting good enough offers. It was becoming more and more likely that he's going to stick with the team. Luis got injured, and he is out for most likely the rest of the year, which is really too bad because he's had a really, really strong second half. Even before the All-Star break, he was having a great July. He had an amazing July, almost 1,000 on base plus slugging. Yeah, he's had a really, really good second half. And if he was able to do that for another month, how much better would those end of the year statistics look? While the White Sox did not trade him, they at the same time said it's very likely, and I would say at this point, even though he's got an injury, it's only a hamstring strain though, so it's not like career ending. Very, 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 very likely that the White Sox will pick up his $20 million club option. It's only an $18 million decision because if they didn't pick up that option, they would have to still pay him a buyout of $2 million. So for a net $18 million, the White Sox really have a chance, I think, to be able to build his value back up and then maybe move him at the deadline next year. There was also some speculation that the White Sox would try to package Luis and Andrew Benintendi together if Luis was having a better season, probably to try to get Andrew Benintendi's contract or at least a portion of it off the books. But then since Luis didn't have a great season, the idea that maybe you don't trade Luis, you trade Andrew Benintendi, who is still not doing great, but serviceable out there, package him with a prospect and send both of those guys out just to get the money off the books. It's a move that I wouldn't put past the White Sox, but I'm so glad they didn't diminish their prospect values. Somebody that could help out in the future just to save some money in the short term. It would be a very short-sighted and terrible move that I would hate, but I wouldn't put it past, at least past front offices to do something like that. So the White Sox outfield look is unchanged with Luis on the books for this year and most likely next year. And I really do see a possibility that the White Sox are able to trade Luis at next year's deadline. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Always the biggest hope. We say that, that appeal applies to every player in the world, but especially Luis, who has a really tough time staying healthy. And then will he get off to a slow start again this coming year in 2026? If so, that just continually makes him untradeable. But if he can pick up next year the way he was finishing this year, then he becomes an actual star talent that could move at the deadline. So we shall see what happens, but I like that the White Sox are rolling the dice on it. They're not making the small budget team decision that they usually have in the past. My number two biggest surprise is of all of the outfielders that could have been moved this year, it was Austin Slater. We've covered Benintendi and Luis enough, but I really thought the guy that was a slam dunk to be traded for maybe a top 30, but in the bottom 30, like a number 25 to 30 prospect on some team would be Mike Tauchman. Tauchman's had a really great year as a contact-oriented hitter who has very professional at-bats, works the count, tires out pitchers. Again, a really professional hitter. I thought he was a slam dunk to move, but it ends up being Austin Slater guy having a much worse year. Shout out, of course, to Austin Slater for being the guy to get the first home run of the White Sox season on opening day, but he didn't have a lot of highlights after that. And then what happens as soon as Austin Slater gets traded to the Yankees? Hamstring strain. He only appeared in 3 games, picked up 7 at-bats. He drove one in. He struck out 4 times against 0 walks, and currently is on a rehab assignment, just recently sent to a rehab assignment in the minor leagues. Will he get back up to the big leagues this year? Maybe, but we'll see. Time will tell on that one. But the White Sox pick up George Zeal, who was the Yankees' 4th-round pick last year. He made it up to Double-A. He was ranked 18th among Yankees prospects, and as I take a look over here in the White Sox system right now, he is the 15th ranked prospect. I couldn't even get the words out. I can't believe the White Sox were able to flip Austin Slater. Let's take a quick look at Austin again to see what did he do even with the White Sox. He batted .236 on base plus slugging, .722, actually better than, I should have given him a bit more credit. His on base percentage was .299. He slugged pretty well though, .423. Of his 29 hits, 6 were doubles, 1 triple, and 5 home runs. He had 11 driven in. Even though the White Sox are absolutely thin in the outfield, he was not one of the top guys to get the call. He was not the 4th outfielder. He was maybe the 5th, maybe the 6th, if we ever had that many people on the bench. And we were able to flip him from a legitimate prospect. He is far from the big leagues. As mentioned, he was in Single-A. He had recently gone up to Double-A when the White Sox acquired him. So it's not like he's about to break onto the scene, but still the White Sox were able to move Austin Slater for something when I thought he was going to not be valued at anything. Meanwhile, Mike Tauchman had a really good year and is still having a very good year. He just came up really clutch in a game that just happened today. Mike Tauchman, as I'm recording this, 275 average, on base plus slugging in the upper 700s. He's getting much more regular playing time. Also, another outfielder, Michael A. Taylor. I think Michael A. Taylor has done an exemplary job of what we would have wanted for him and from him. He's played good defense. He brings the speed, of course. And I was expecting absolutely nothing from him offensively. I'm talking about a 200 batting average at best with zero power. What we have gotten is a 266 batting average. Yes, on base plus slugging mid 600s. Again, I'm not expecting power from him. He's hit 8 home runs. I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. And that is another guy that a veteran on a 1-year deal, much like Tauchman. I thought either of those guys would have been traded before Austin Slater, but it ends up being Austin Slater that goes. That was my big surprise. Which outfielder moves out of Benintendi, Luis, Taylor, Tauchman? It ends up being Austin Slater. And finally, my biggest surprise of the trade deadline, the bullpen is untouched. I really thought the White Sox were going to, like I said, if it's not nailed down, get rid of it. I knew there would be some prospects that were untouchables. Grant Taylor, chief among them. I cannot believe people were thinking the White Sox would trade Grant Taylor, a top prospect who has barely any service time. Why would the White Sox move him? Even for a big haul of other minor leaguers who are also unproven. That seemed weird to me that the White Sox were getting calls, because that just didn't make any sense. But let's just take a look at this list. Tyler Alexander has not been playing well. I would not be upset if he was DFA'd. There are quite a few people, if you just look down this list, and I think Winkelman Gonzalez also would be a type that would be an untouchable. I was really thinking someone like Mike Vasil, Steven Wilson. I made a video before the deadline, and I think I called out Mike Vasil, Steven Wilson, and one other, and may have been Bryce Wilson, that I was saying I'm just hoping that the White Sox hold on to one of these guys, because I know at least one of them's leaving, probably two, but I don't want to lose all three because it's just going to gut the bullpen, and the White Sox won't be able to hold on to any games in September, in August. But ends up nobody moves, which I love. I think that's a great thing because, yes, the games don't matter for this team. They're not playoff bound. To create a system, to create an expectation of winning, and it's a lot easier to keep that momentum and win games when we're not routinely giving up leads in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning and just completely killing morale, which I think happened a lot last year. I think that's really what helped lead the White Sox to a historically bad team. So the White Sox keep their bullpen intact for the rest of this year, making it a lot easier for us to want to watch games, not thinking that, well, I don't care how big our lead is in the 5th, it's going to be gone by the 9th. White Sox actually have a chance. If they have a good, strong run in these next few weeks, we could possibly not lose 100 games. And that's possible because the bullpen is still intact. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know any of your thoughts. What were your big surprises, disappointments, and if you had any happy moments that came out of the trade deadline? Thanks for watching. Play ball and go Sox.